The River's Voice. Part 3, The Listener. This part focuses on the last 4 chapters. Chapter 6, Beneath the Surface. Obiora finds the Ofo staff, an ancient symbol of the river's voice, and learns to carry and speak with it. 6. Chapter 7, The Voice Returns. Obiora calls a village gathering and sings the ancient song, awakening the river and reminding the villagers of their connection to it. 7. Chapter 8, The Flooding Song. The river rises and cleanses the village of the machines, showing visions of their ancestors and a future where the river is alive. 8. Chapter 9, Remembering Again. The village begins to remember and honor the river again. Obiora becomes the true Ekele-Oma, guiding the villagers in their connection to the river. 9. Chapter 10, The Listener. Years pass, and Obiora continues to be the listener, ensuring that the river and its stories are never forgotten. 10. Let's ride on. Chapter 6, Beneath the Surface. Obiora bursts from the water with the Ofo clutched to his chest, coughing and gasping. The river was calm again, the current slow and warm, as if nothing had happened. But something had changed. He could feel it. The staff paused faintly in his hands, steady, alive, ancient, carved with symbols that danced in and out of his awareness, like they weren't meant to be read with the eyes. It was heavier than it looked, not with weight, but with memory. Nne Ade needs to see this, he whispered, climbing out onto the muddy bank. He didn't run, he walked. Every step forward felt like a procession. When he reached her hut, the sun had just dipped below the tree line, and the fireflies blinked along the path like stars remembering their way home. Inside, Nne Ade lay on her mat, breath shallow but eyes open. I felt it, she said before he could speak. Obiora knelt beside her, laying the Ofo between them. It was hidden beneath the river, like it was waiting for me. Nne Ade's fingers hovered over it, reverent. This is the staff of the first listener, Olioku. It carries the voice of Onaya. She who first gave it up to remind us that memory has shape. Obiora frowned. What do I do with it? You carry it. You speak with it. And when the time comes, you call upon the river, not with fear, but with truth. She paused, then added, but truth has a cost. Obiora nodded. I'm not afraid. She smiled, tired and proud. Then listen. One last lesson. That night, Nne Ade spoke slowly, her voice barely above a whisper, weaving the final strands of a story passed down from generations. Onaya was not just a spirit. She was once a guardian. She descended during a time of forgetting, when the earth grew hot and the people turned on each other. She saw that water was the last hope, so she bound herself to it. To protect, to preserve. She gave her voice to the river, but the people, greedy for more, stopped listening. They built over her temples, dried her tributaries, forgot her name. So she grew quiet, not because she was gone, but because she was waiting for one who could hear her again. You, Obiora, are her echo. Obiora stared into the fire, the words ringing through his bones. The Ofo hummed in rhythm with his heartbeat. I dreamed of her, he said. She said the storm is coming, that I must remember her. Then you must remind them, Nne Ade whispered. With story, with song, with your voice. Because if she fades completely, we all do. When Obiora stepped out into the night, the air felt different, heavy, still. He walked to the water's edge and knelt. The Ofo glowed faintly in his grip. Onaya, he whispered. The wind picked up. I know you're in pain. I feel it too, but I will not let them erase you. The water rippled in answer. Obiora dipped the staff into the river, and he saw a flash of visions, too fast to grasp, filled his mind. 1,000 faces singing by firelight. Children swimming in clear blue. Crops thriving along the bank. Then smoke. Concrete. Machines grinding roots. A woman's face, cracked and crying. Then silence. But beneath that silence, a song. Old. Faint. waiting to be sung. He pulled the staff from the water and stood. He knew what had to be done. Tomorrow, he would return to the square and speak, not just for the river, but for everyone who had forgotten what it meant to belong. Chapter 7, The Voice Returns. The village square was unusually full by mid-morning. Word had spread, Obiora was calling a gathering. Some came out of curiosity, others out of doubt. A few came because their hearts had been stirring in secret, uneasy with the silence of the birds, the sickness in the fish, the strange heat rising from the ground. The machine still droned in the distance, relentless, indifferent. Obiora stood beneath the old Iroko stump, the ofo in his hands. He wore a simple wrapper and no shoes, dust clinging to his feet like roots. Behind him, the river shimmered faintly in the sun, still hurt, still waiting. The villagers murmured as he stepped forward. Chief Okuri leaned against a tree, arms folded. Mr. Agbo stood with arms crossed, sunglasses reflecting the light. Nearby, Chuka stood at the edge of the crowd, torn between loyalty and disbelief. Obiora raised the staff. The murmuring died. "I will speak," he said, voice steady, if not loud. "I speak not as a chief, nor a man of riches. I speak as Ekele-Oma, as the one who still hears what most of you have forgotten." He turned slowly, eyes meeting the faces in the crowd. "You think this river is just water, just something to use, something to sell. But she remembers more than you do. She has given you life for generations. And now, she is dying. You say we are poor, that we must change. But change without memory is death. If we lose the river, we lose our ancestors, our spirit, ourself." A few heads lowered. Obiora lifted the ofo, and the carvings on it shimmered in the sun. This was buried beneath the water, left by the first listener. It is not just a stick, it is memory. And memory is how we survive. He took a breath, closed his eyes, and sang. The melody was low, ancient, trembling like a reed in the wind. It was the song Nne Ade had taught him, a weaving of mourning and hope, the song Onaya had once gifted to the first people. At first, no one moved. Then, Poche stepped forward with his old drum, dusted it off, and began to tap a rhythm to match the boy's voice. The sound cracked the silence like lightning splitting a cloud. Mama F closed her eyes and joined in, humming the harmony. A boy beside Chuka began to clap. And then, Chuka himself, slowly, unsure, added his voice. Obiora opened his eyes. The village was singing, not all, but enough. The river stirred. From the bank, a breeze rushed in, cool and sudden. The trees swayed. The dust lifted. The river glimmered, not with sunlight, but something older, something awake. And then the water rose. Just enough to spill over the machines left at the edge. Just enough to knock over the orange barriers that had blocked the shrine. Just enough to speak, not in destruction, but in warning. Mr. Agbo stepped back, alarmed. "What is this?" he hissed. "This is nonsense, superstition." Chief Okri looked at him, then at Obiora. And for the first time in weeks, the chief was silent. When the song ended, the village stood still. Obiora lowered the ofo. His hands trembled, but his eyes were clear. "I have remembered," he said. "Now it is your turn." And then he walked to the river's edge and sat, the staff beside him, as the wind stirred the trees in rhythm to a melody only a few still knew by heart. Chapter 8, The Flooding Song. Rain had not fallen in Aboh-Ida for weeks. The skies remained stubbornly blue, the air thick and unmoving. But on the night Obiora called for the final ritual, the clouds gathered, quiet, slow, like an army waking from slumber. The village moved to the riverside in a procession lit by fireflies and oil lamps. The river, dark and still, glinted with uneasy anticipation. Even the machine stood quiet now, abandoned for the night. The developers had not returned since the rising waters. Mr. Agbo had left in his boat 2 days before, promising to report back to headquarters. No one missed him. At the water's edge, Obiora stood in white cloth, the Ofo staff gripped tightly in his hand. Around him, the villagers formed a wide circle, young and old, believers and doubters, bound now by shared breath. Paul Uche's drum thumped once. Then again, Obiora stepped forward. In the beginning, he said, his voice steady, there was no river, only a sky full of morning. Onaya wept, and from her tears, the river came. He lifted the staff. She gave us her spirit, her voice. But we forgot her. A gust of wind swept through the crowd. She waits for us to remember. He raised the staff high. Tonight, we return her voice. And he sang. The song was not of this world. It came from the ground, from the bones of trees, from the riverbed and the mouths of the unborn. It was layered with echoes, Obiora's voice first, then the old songs of the ancestors, then the weeping of Onaya herself. The villagers joined, one by one. A mother with her baby strapped to her back, the basket weaver, the palm wine tapper, even Chief Okori, quiet but singing. The drumming built faster, deeper. The air trembled, and the river rose. This time, she rose with fury, not to destroy, but to cleanse. Water spilled over the banks, but not onto the homes. It wrapped around the machines like vines and pulled them down, breaking gears, snapping beams. Cables floated like dead snakes. The fences around the shrine collapsed, swallowed whole. But not one person was harmed. Instead, the water shimmered with light, as though starlight had been poured into it, and in its reflection, the villagers saw visions. Their ancestors dancing along the banks, children yet to be born swimming in clear waters, a future where the river was alive and singing again. And standing in the center of the current, made of moonlight and memory, was Onaya. Her eyes were whole now, stars replaced with warmth. She looked to Obiora. You remembered, her voice said, not aloud, but in the hearts of all present. Obiora fell to his knees. I will not forget again, he whispered. She smiled. And then she was gone. The water receded gently, like a tide bowing to a new dawn. Silence followed. Then applause. Laughter. Tears. The villagers gathered in tight clusters, touching shoulders, holding hands, pressing their feet into the soft, wet earth as though trying to root themselves in that moment. Obiora remained kneeling, soaked to the skin, the Ofo now glowing faintly in the soft light of morning. Poguchi placed a hand on his shoulder. You brought her back. Obiora looked up. No, he said. She never left. We did. Chapter 9, Remembering Again. The morning after the river rose, Aboh-Ida was still. The air smelled of wet earth and hibiscus. The trees seemed taller. The birds returned, first in ones, then in flocks, twittering through the branches, fluttering over the river like messengers sent to confirm what had been restored. The machines were gone. Most had been dragged into the water and swallowed, never to be seen again. What remained, twisted rods, cracked panels, a faded orange helmet, was collected and burned in a fire pit that crackled for days. The shrine was reopened. No longer fenced, no longer feared. Children ran past it again, their laughter ringing like chimes. And the people remembered. They began to tell the stories again. The real ones. At dawn, fishermen poured libations before casting their nets, whispering blessings to Onaya. The women sang old songs as they washed by the shore. The village's elders gathered under the new tree planted beside the stump of the old Iroko, where they spoke of the days before forgetting began. And Obiora, now the Ekele-Oma in truth, was no longer seen as just a boy. He sat by Nne Ade's side as the sun dipped low, the orange glow spilling into the small hut like honey. She had grown quieter in the past few days. Her hands were colder, her breathing shallower. But her eyes, always, were bright. I saw her, Obiora said softly. Onaya. She rose from the water. Nne Ade gave a small, knowing smile. Then she has accepted you. I only did what you taught me. No, she said, coughing lightly. You did what only you could do. You remembered out loud. Obiora swallowed the knot rising in his throat. I'm not ready to lose you. You're not losing me, she said. You are becoming me. She reached under her pillow and pulled out a faded cloth bag, placing it in his hands. Inside was a necklace, a simple cord threaded with old river stones. This belonged to Olioku, she said, passed from listener to listener. Now, it's yours. Obiora bowed his head as she tied it around his neck, her fingers trembling slightly. Thank you, he whispered. No, she said with a tired smile. Thank you. You gave her voice again. And mine. Nne Ade passed that night, her spirit as calm as the river's current. She was buried near the riverbank, beneath a tree she had planted as a child. The whole village came, singing the songs she once taught them. And when Obiora led the final chant, the river rippled once, soft, silver, and full of love. Weeks passed, then months. Obiora grew into his voice, not only with song, but with presence. He became a guide, a memory keeper, a bridge between the past and the yet to come. Children sat around him at dusk, listening to stories their parents had once forgotten. Young men learned the old drum rhythms. Young women returned to the sacred chants. And the river flowed, brighter, cleaner, singing quietly once more. Not everyone stayed. Some left for the cities, for opportunities. But even they carried the stories with them. They knew now that forgetting was not freedom. It was fading. And remembering was resistance. One quiet evening, Obiora sat by the water's edge, the Ofo resting beside him in the grass, Nne Ade's necklace warm against his chest. The river lapped at his feet, steady and sure. He closed his eyes, listened, and smiled. Chapter 10, The Listener. Years passed. The village of Aboh-Ida changed, but not in the way the developers once promised. Not with steel towers or concrete ports, but with roots. The river was still the same old spine of the village, winding and whispering, but it flowed clearer now, freer. The birds had returned to stay. The fish were plentiful again, so much so that even the young boys, once distracted by city dreams, took pride in casting nets. Where once machines had stood, tall grasses now danced. Trees had been replanted, and the shrine had been rebuilt, open to all, with new carvings etched into the stone. Beside the image of Onaya, another had been added, a boy holding the Ofo, surrounded by song. Obiora stood before that carving now. He was no longer a boy. His face had grown lean and strong, his shoulders broader. Lines had formed near his eyes, not from age but from squinting into the sun, laughing at children's riddles, and carrying the weight of memory. Around his neck hung Nne Ade's necklace. In his right hand, the Ofo remained, a little more worn, a little more his. Children sat cross-legged in the shade behind him, waiting. He turned to them, smiled gently, and lowered himself to the ground. Who remembers how the river began? He asked. A dozen small hands shot into the air. He nodded to a girl with wide eyes. Onaya wept, she said proudly, because people were forgetting. And her tears became the river. And why do we sing her name? To remember. The children chorused. Obiora nodded. Because remembering is how we protect what matters. He let the silence settle around them like a story settling into its end. Then he looked at the river. The current moved slowly. A heron stepped delicately along the far bank. Somewhere deeper, a splash echoed. A song stirred in the reeds. He could still hear her, and he always would, because he was the listener, not just of the river, but of the people, of the earth, of time. And as long as someone remembered, the river would never be silent again.